Nina Kimes on Twitter says, this is the debate right now. Who you pick for NFL MVP depends on how you define the award. QB is inherently more valuable for obvious reasons, but Tyreek Hill is mounting a Russell Westbrook-like case because he's making history. I agree. And how do you all feel about the Russell Westbrook MVP now?
I feel fine about it.
Oh, I mean, yeah, who cares?
But I have to look back and see who he beat out that year.
If those voters could go back and do it again, they would change that vote. They would absolutely change that vote. They got caught up in the excitement of the numbers, and they felt sorry for him. Come on. That was a sympathy vote because KD left him. Of course
it was not a sympathy vote.
It completely was a sympathy vote because it was he was averaging a triple-double, but it was all this is what we do too much in MVP. Oh, my God, look at the team around him. He's doing it by himself. Doing what? Not contending, so who cares?
Averaging 25, 10, and 10.
Cool. Do you know how many players in the NBA that if you're just like, hey, just go crazy. Just here's the ball, go put up numbers, be a maniac, don't worry too much if we lose some of the games. There are so many people. Do you think LeBron James could average a triple-double? It is sleep if he wanted to.
Draymond almost got one last night.
Oh, my God. LeBron James could absolutely dwarf those numbers if he wanted to, but he's trying to win. He's trying to win. But I see her point. Her point's a good one. Tyreek Hill just sitting out there with almost 1,500 yards already on a team that's 9-3.
Yeah.
They don't have any good wins, but 9-3.
Yeah, but nobody cares about that. I mean, they got 9 wins, so it doesn't really matter. Good wins aren't worth more than bad wins in terms of how it all breaks down. A better comp for Mina Kimes would have been Adrian Peterson because I believe Minnesota that year was 9-7 when he broke the record for most yards in a season.
I think you're right. Yeah.
So that to me is a more appropriate comp than the Russell Westbrook one, although it was a stat thing for Adrian Peterson on a team that wasn't great, but he broke maybe the most hallowed record in the NFL, the rushing record.
Yeah.
And so if Tyreek breaks a less hallowed record, but it's a record nonetheless, it's a real one.
I think that when we start looking at stats, this is going to sound stupid because stats are part of it, but if your lead story as to why you voted for someone for MVP is a stat, my opinion is you're doing it wrong. Stats are obviously part of it. You have to see the totals, but what the team is doing, the context around it, all of that. I think Tyreek is in the conversation. No question is in the conversation. And then there's this, and then we'll get back to you on the phones, 888-957-9570. Is this just like a homer take? Or is there something to it? Elliott Shore Parks in Philadelphia, WIP. Every single GM in the NFL would take the Eagles roster over the 49ers and the Cowboys rosters. I think that's laughable. Absolutely laughable. I think if you're looking at the 49er roster, there is not a more star-studded, effective defense in the NFL, period. And as far as the offense is concerned, it's really simply a matter of how far along you are in your belief in what Brock Purdy is producing. Because I would also argue best left tackle, top 5 receiving core, top 5 tight end, number 1 running back. You know, I think the Eagles' offensive line in total maybe is a little bit better than the total of the 49ers offensive line, but it's comparable, especially with Trent. And you know, most people today would argue that you would want Jalen Hurts over Brock Purdy, but is getting closer fast. I don't know how the hell, if you're looking at the Niner roster, I don't know how you could rank or rate anything above that if you're doing it on a piece of paper.
Well, if we're doing roster, are we talking about the 55 or are we talking about the 45 who are up on game day? How are we defining this? It's not just the starting 22. If we're going to go through the full roster, that's where the Niners, to me, have the real edge because their depth at a lot of these pieces is extraordinary. And you can go to Oren Burks as your third linebacker, a guy who's not on the field normally unless Dre Greenlaw gets into it with security. The Eagles have great depth at the defensive line, but that's about it. Now, their top two receivers, I think you would take over, and that's even a tough conversation. Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown or Ayuk and Debo?
I don't know.
It's debatable.
I think you can make the argument that A.J. Brown is the best of the four. I think you can make that argument. But if I were seeding them, I would say that the Eagles have 1 and 4 and the Niners have 2 and 3.
I think you could spend a whole show debating that because Devontae Smith is very good.
So are
the Niners too. Yeah,
good receiving course.
And you look at running back, and that's where you get where you get a real edge for the 49ers. Yep. Swift has been good, but McCaffrey is an MVP candidate.
How many Eagles? Give me a couple names. How many Eagles would you take over their Niner counterpart?
Well, you'd take A.J. Brown.
Okay.
As
that's one.
Right tackle, you'd take Lane Johnson.
Agreed. Okay, that's 2.
Maybe you take Fletcher Cox over Eric Armstead.
Center.
Yeah, Jason Kelsey, without a doubt. Good call. So that's 3 on the offensive side for sure. And I don't know enough about interior line play to maybe Larry Krueger can weigh in on Landon Dickerson against the Killer Bees and Cam Jurgens, not the lotion. And we could really get into the weeds with it. But
you want Darius Slay over Charvarius Ward?
Nah, not this year.
Not right now.
Maybe last year or the year before. Darius Slay is declining a little bit.
You want Jalen Hurts over Brock Purdy?
Geez, not this year. Brock Purdy is playing. He's playing at an MVP level. He's the MVP front runner.
So
it's a homer take.
There are 22 starters on both teams, and we're struggling to get to 4.
I gave you Fletcher Cox.
All right. We're struggling to get to 5.
We can
starters that we would take on the Eagles.
Some of these are debatable, and we obviously have a Niner slant because we talk about their games exclusively. We don't watch Philly as much as we watch the Niners.
You can call it a Niner slant, and I can't argue that. However, here's how I can argue. This is not saying that the Niners are the best team in football right now is not a homer take. Vegas has been trying to scream it from the mountaintops for 3 weeks, and no one's listening. Now people are listening. They got their attention now when they beat the Eagles by 23 in their own building, even though they spotted them the first quarter. Like that, this is not a homer take. The Niners are right now, as constructed and healthy, this is the best team in football, and I don't think second place is really, really breathing down their neck at all.
Well, I think the take that whoever put out on Twitter, guy I've never heard of.
Elliott Shore-Parks.
Fine. I'll believe you. 3 names, 1 take.
Elliott with 1 T.
And it's a bad one.
Very efficient.
I don't care. I'm not going to try to tweet at him or try to spell check him.
Shore with 2 R's.
But it's a homer take. And if Philly does have the roster that everyone would envy, then why did the Niners go in there and hammer them by 23 on their field? And why did the Niners go and take on Dallas and hammer them by 4 touchdowns on the Niners field? That's the part of it that I don't really quite understand. And if Philly goes out and loses to Dallas this weekend, then what in terms of having the most enviable roster in football?
Which I think they will. The Eagles are very good. They're just not all they're cracked up to be. That's what it looks like to me.